Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending upon where you are calling in from today. Hello and welcome. Just opened up the doors and gaining everybody into the room. It's always such a delight to see who joins the call. It's always fun to see everyone's faces, so welcome. If you've made it into this space, you are in the Threshold Lab with the Moment Institute. My name is Emily Ray, and I'm working very closely with David on bringing this community space to life and launching it here within the Moment Institute. This is an open house session. We are gathered here today for the next 90 minutes or so to explore being in community, to explore what's on our hearts and minds, and possibly where we can have some deeper conversations about things that matter most to us. So as folks are getting in the room, I invite you to check in. I invite you to, if you'd like to hop on the mic, or if you prefer to do it in the chat, you're also welcome to do that. But what's on your mind today? What brought you to the lab space? So I've got a note from Karen here in the chat, just saying curious about being here and the idea of experimenting in community. Absolutely. The lab space is, it is in constant evolution. Stephanie and I were just talking about this. In launching this group and launching this space in June, there really has been so many key learnings that David and I and our co-hosts have had by just opening up the room and asking folks what they would need, what they would want out of a gathering spot, maybe a professional oasis of sorts, where we come in and replenish ourselves on the journey. So welcome, Karen. We'll talk more about the structure of the lab kind of towards the end. Right now, we just are going to get into conversation. If you've been to one of these sessions before, what brought you back? Yes, good morning, Yaron. It's great to see you again. And how are you doing, Robert? It's good to see you.
Hi, Emily. Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you very much. All's good. And to echo Yaron, who's in rainy New Jersey, I'm in rainy southern Scotland. I feel your pain.
Oh. Sigrid has mentioned that she's joining the lab or interested in joining the lab. Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for checking in. I do like to give us a little bit of time on the front end of the call as people are getting into the room and kind of settling in for the day. I would love to take the opportunity to introduce my co-host for today. I've got Stephanie Morrison with me. Hi, Stephanie. Is your audio working okay? No.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes. Hi.
Don't know what happened. I'm going to say it's Mercury retrograde.
So Stephanie, one of the things you'll notice when you're coming into the lab space is that it is somewhere that we are wanting to amplify the voices of the people who work alongside of us. And so Stephanie has been involved with the Moment Institute for quite some time. And I was wondering if you could just kind of share a little bit more about your journey here and kind of what keeps bringing you back to this space.
Sure. Thanks, Emily.
Yeah.
Well, welcome, everyone. Sorry about the audio glitches. All of a sudden, you just hear ba-bing, but it's all good. As David would say, you just work in the moment, just breathe through it. So I've been associated with the Moment Institute since about 2019, when I left my corporate job and was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next in my life. And I decided that for so much of what I did, I'd been somewhat of a coach, and everyone had said, oh, you should try coaching. You should try coaching. So what the heck, why not try it? So I did the W. Beck's narrative coaching, and that kind of got me hooked. And it's a way of being that for me just suited who I was and where I wanted to be. And then, so I've done all of David's programs. There was an intermediate program called Beyond Coaching that I think has shifted into some other new programs. But so I did that, and then I did integrated development, and then followed on with narrative release. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to shout out anything that I can help you with. And so I've actually been practicing integrative development, which for me it's kind of who I am. I've always been that sort of person. And what's really fascinating is we're doing it. There's 5 women doing it, and 3 of us have completed integrative development, and another person has done narrative coaching. And so we're doing it very much in the Moment Institute way. And so it's, for me, the lab is a great opportunity to practice. And our particular program is done as a group, which is very different than doing it one-on-one. And so it's really been fascinating to just see what it means to be in the moment and not have that plan. We have programs set up, but we're really flexible. So I'm interested to see how everyone else is finding where you are in the world, especially given all that's going on. So how's that?
It's wonderful. I was curious, Stephanie, is there, any particular project or client that you have been working with ID that you want to just highlight the application or the space of what you're seeing and how you approached doing this kind of work with them?
Sure. I think the most impactful program is one that we're just completing our second phase on, and that's working with a group in New York City, part of the I guess it's health. I'm not sure it's what all the names, but this is the emergency preparedness group. And what's really fascinating about this is a group that's been obviously really stressed with COVID. They're the group that puts together all the programs to support New York City. And what we're doing is helping them uncover, how did they survive? How do they as a group and as individuals? And so it's been really fascinating to sit with what are the ways that we can help them show up healthier. And we're so we've done some really incredible work, but it's as simple as just having people and sitting in conversation. And very similar to this. So what's happening right now? What's coming up for you? And it's giving people an opportunity to really learn in community. which for me makes something like the lab really powerful, because I've seen what it can do when you share. Here's what's coming up for me. Oh, me too. Oh, well, mine's a little different, but now I see where you're coming from, so I can have a different conversation with you. And so for me, it's been a really great learning experience in just being with what is, and the beauty of pro, that pause, relax and open, and what's needed happens. And we've had incredible results from it. So yeah, so that's probably the biggest one for me.
Mm.
It's scary letting go.
And how do you approach an organization and say, I don't have a program to sell, or that's not going to be based on these rigid outcomes, but instead, this is the type of approach that we want to take with these teams. What does that sound like? So it helped in this particular case that the lead for our work knew one of the senior leadership team. Mm-hmm. And so she was able to give him an experience of, this is what it's like to sit within an ID experience. And then we were able to show and demonstrate, what does it mean to have the capacity to fix yourself or to care for yourself. And the program it's called a health and healing culture. Mm. And so this is about giving people the tools. And so we were able to demonstrate in very simple, sort of elegantly easy ways. It doesn't take much to give people the autonomy. We do a little bit of teach and a lot of bit of conversation. And so it's been, it's a difficult thing if you're just going in cold for a program. That's the one thing we're trying to figure out as we're taking, because we're going to take this to other places. But yeah, so that's probably having someone who has had an experience with it is the way to be able to bring it in, because then they understand it themselves. Mm. I'm wondering if anybody has any questions for Stephanie or any kind of follow-up insights. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Sure.
I'm also really happy to welcome Susan on the call today. Hi, Susan. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you. As you can see, I'm sitting outside. It's a beautiful day here. And I just wanted to share that visual with you all here.
It's beautiful.
It's always nice to be outside, especially when it's nice.
So
yeah.
Susan is a member of the lab who is working on a project and is really, I think you have the distinction of being the first member to bring a project in progress into the lab space. And so it's a really exciting time because you are able to kind of share with us or give us a tangible experience of what it means to bring it into community and to share and to ask and to offer. And so I would love to hear where you are with the work that you're doing and how we might as a community be able to support you in that.
Oh, that's so generous. Thank you, Miigwech. So first of all, I'm Susan, and I live in Canada, in Turtle Island. I'm Indigenous to this land, and what else can I say? I live in a small city called Brandon, Manitoba, and my parents are are from some reserves in the area, and they're both residential school survivors or boarding schools if you're states-based, or if you're from another part of the world, you don't understand what that means. It basically means that children were abducted from their families and put into boarding schools in order to erase culture and language, connection to family and community, and also to take the land. So, like of all the, like in Canada, at least, or so-called Canada, there's like, we started off with all of this being Indigenous land, and now we only have control of maybe 4%. And now governments are asking for the rest of that 4%. So I come with an interesting legacy. I wanted to let you all know that. So I just really want to see, like, I'm interested in seeing who here is already in the lab. That's really cool. And who is thinking about becoming part of the lab. Yay, so awesome. All right, so okay, another little tidbit about me. I'm a massage therapist, and that grew out of a curiosity around how the body works, and really it became about how to self-regulate my own body and my own trauma responses and those kinds of things. So my project, let's cut to the chase here. So my project involves educating my professional association, and it has 1,200 members in our province. And so we're basically looking, I am basically looking to effect change in the organization. So the change that I want to see is doing the calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I can send you the link if you want in the chat once I'm finished speaking. I just don't want to be multitasking while I'm talking. Okay, so so some of the calls to action are to basically improve services and create a better relationship, or even to start a relationship between Indigenous people and non-Indigenous people in this country. And also to reclaim people whose ancestry might have been forgotten, might have been stamped out or neglected or abandoned, those kinds of things. And so my specific focus for my organization is to look at the calls to actions to improve services and access of massage therapy to Indigenous people. We have been hurt by touch, but we can heal by touch. And for that to happen, we need to educate in a kind way, in a way that does not blame or does not make people feel guilty or responsible necessarily, but just to be aware, because when we are in touch with people, as one of my mentors so brilliantly stated, even in conversation or through physical touch, that we are bumping into one another's histories. So to understand one another's histories is really important. So for those kinds of things to happen, we want to educate them about the legacy of residential school systems and the rest of the systems that have come around that. We want to also provide trauma-informed care. We want to look at the barriers and access to service. So this is a big ask. This is a big project. We're starting with bringing in educators to educate our members, and also to look at marketing, languaging, getting the word out to people, to that they are part of this conversation as well. So I'm just going to stop there and say that what I'm needing from the community, or just continue rather, what I'm needing from the community here is, I'm a narrative coach grad, and I'm interested in the ID way, possibly. So if this project sounds like, okay, so if you understand about change and organizational change, that's an area that I don't really work too well in. I work with individuals. So that's an area that's a little bit of a weak spot, or there's a growth area for me. So I would like to know more about, how do you change organizations? Just generally speaking, because that's really what we're doing, okay? Yeah, and again, as I said, in a kind way, get into conversations, learn about one another. Yeah, I hope I kept that brief enough to provide context and stating a need and stating where we're at. And
Thank you so much, Susan. I would like to open up the conversation to those of you who heard what Susan shared and maybe have questions or insights, at least at this first moment or stage. Please go ahead, Louise.
Hi, thank you. It's really, really interesting, Susan, what you're saying. And I'm curious, how do you expect the lab, practically, how would the lab be of assistance to you in your work?
If any of this message resonates with you, just get in contact with me on the message,
Right.
you know, and let's start with a conversation and tell me where you're at and how that resonates with you and how you might have some tools that might be able to help with this process.
So the lab's a space, is it where we would share a project that we want to work on or we're working on and see who else is in the lab that might like to come and work with us and help us to develop it?
I would say that there's room for different layers of involvement, or, you know, it's not necessarily a call per se. It could be to find a collaborator or someone, but to be able to come into a space and share what you're working on, see what insights or questions it brings up in other people, have a place to share maybe something that you developed that you want some feedback on from people who have a background, a similar background, or who have worked with similar kinds of organizations. One of the ways that we are envisioning, and I say envisioning because, thank you, Susan, you're really the first person to bring their project up to the surface and have it be something that we can collectively look at and speak to. You know, that this becomes a place of practice and a safe area to scaffold what you're doing out in the real world by bringing it in here and bringing it in front of friends, colleagues, community members to maybe run it through an iteration or have a rep with it. If you're going to run an exercise or you're sharing a brochure with a new bit of language, or to what Susan said, a different kind of call to action, and just to see where and how that lands with people who do this kind of work with different organizations and different kinds of clients. Please.
And I ask again. So I haven't done the narrative coach training, or I am a coach, but I haven't done any trainings with David before. So how much of a barrier would that be in the lab?
Stephanie, it seems like you.
I actually don't think there would be any barrier. Narrative coaching isn't a process or a checkbox kind of thing. It's a way of being. And the fact that you're here and you're seeing something that feels right for you means that you basically have what it is that we all have embraced. And sure, there's some practices that can happen, and there are ways of being with a client or a group, but part of the lab gives you the opportunity to experience that without having to do a whole program. And so it's in the practice, it's in the breakouts, it's in sitting with a small group and watching and observing or trying something out. Oh, I really liked what you said. Hey, can I try that out? So I don't think that as I said in the beginning, for me, it was so natural because this is who I am. And it was a confirmation that I can be who I am in the world because it exists in nature and I'm not just a one-off or an outlier. So I wouldn't say that having certifications and all of that is critical. Does that help?
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a very caring group. It's a group that you feel like you're always getting a hug
Mm.
and that there's purpose in the world. So yeah.
And I might also just say that the lab was designed to be potentially an on-ramp if you did want to get into a program, but maybe weren't quite sure or the timing wasn't right yet. That it would be a way to be a part of this community without the the longer term commitment to a certification. At the moment, our programs start at the Moment Institute at the start of the year, and they generally run about 10 months or so. And for right now, there wouldn't be a way to immediately hop into a program because they're not going to start until January. But if this was a space that you felt a connection to or in community with, joining the lab would be a way for you to participate and to get involved as you were thinking about joining a program or maybe waiting for one to start. The flip side of that is a lot of people here have been through the programs and they're just looking for a way to stay involved and to stay connected to the communities and in the conversation, because it is a common thing for people to be transformed in the way that they work and the way that they practice as a result of these experiences. And there is a desire to stay in touch and to stay involved. So the lab offers both an on-ramp and an off-ramp to programs, but there's no prerequisites that are necessary to participate here.
It's an interesting, just real quick, and then I see Reagan's got her hand up. Louise, as you experience it, if you did decide to go to do the programs, it just enriches your experience in the program. And that's what I've seen as I've gone through narrative coaching, then ID, and then narrative release. Each time you metabolize it. And so having this experience in the lab, if you did decide you wanted to look at some of the other programs, it just makes it a nicer experience. Sorry, Reagan, go ahead.
No, sorry at all, Stephanie. Hi, thanks so much for holding the space for all of us. Susan, I just wanted to say I'm literally touched, metaphorically touched by what you shared with us, and thank you for that. And I'm just so struck by, you're talking about histories bumping into each other. My accent gives away my background, and I'm just hearing you share such sort of intergenerational trauma. And, as soon as you sort of touch on truth and reconciliation with the South African background, it's just sort of very loud for me. So all I really want to say, not about me, but what I'm hearing you say, is such beautiful resonance. You sound so on the right track in terms of asking the right questions about how do you meet people in a way that you can keep what we call their social engagement system open, not in shame, in presence, and you're just asking such powerful questions, and really just really resonant from a trauma-informed perspective and from a cultural perspective. And I understand this much just where I'm coming from. So just really, really appreciate what you shared, and what an amazing project. And I imagine the lab will be an awesome resource for you. Thank you.
So Susan, I'm in Tucson, Arizona, and we have the Tohono O'odham Nation here, and it's incredibly powerful in everything about it, in the land, the culture. And I sit with, as a relatively new resident, 5 years here, of how do I support the cultivation and the programs that I've attended, talking about all of the pain and suffering in the schools, the boarding schools. It's just, it's a parallel situation. You're at the top of North America, I'm at the bottom of North America. But for me, the collaboration is, how do I show up as non-Indigenous in a way that is supportive? And it's such a tough place for me, because I don't want to just have anyone feel like I'm just, I don't even know how to approach it. So collaborating would be incredible. In how can I give back and honor the land, the people, the culture? So sign me up.
This question comes up a lot around allyship. So I guess that's the invitation to any of you who feel moved by it, is how do I become an ally? And it's a very common question. So if people are interested, I will throw some things in the resources section in the lab space. If you're not in the lab space yet and you're interested, give me a message in the chat and I'll send that to you.
Yaron, I see a couple of things that you put in the chat there around, I know that they were contextually around what Susan had shared a little bit before, but how do organizations change, and appreciating Susan's work as an extension of who she is. And then you posed an interesting question down there, which is to say, how might I facilitate change in organizations using the power of touch? And I'm wondering, is there anything more that you would like to say about that question, or anything that's come to mind for you?
Yeah, well, thank you. I think since I wrote it, what came up for me was just, in a way, your story, Susan, of who you are is touching. So, and it's moving. So I think what I realized, at first I was thinking more literal, but then my brain went metaphoric too. So I just, I encourage you to keep exploring that avenue. I imagine there'll be success, because I think there's a lot of different ways organizations can change, but what's your way? And I think you're already on your way, so to speak.
Susan, if I could ask a follow-up, just to Yaron's question there. I'm thinking somewhat, tangibly, what are the ways that, you are inviting your organization into this change? Like, are you at a place now with your project where, practically speaking, here are some things that you're doing, or are you in a space where you're still brainstorming what that could look like?
All right, great question. So we have an unofficial task force comprised of there's 3 of us, 1 board member, myself, and a staff member of the organization. And we have already booked a speaker to come in to talk about some of the history component from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission from Canada. So we have that on the books. Next thing we're organizing or looking to have approval to do is called a Just Get Over It exercise, because that is, and it's an immersive exercise where you read statements, you develop empathy, and it's called Just Get Over It because that is what we're told over and over and over again when we are talking about trauma and intergenerational trauma. So that's the response that we often get from society. And so we want to change that conversation. And so those are the 2 tangible things that we're working on right now. So, and the other thing that we're doing, as we're basically building wings as we fly. And the other thing that we're working on, or that I'm doing most of the heavy lifting here, but it's a joy. I mean, I think about it all the time. So we're building the container, looking at our scope of practice. We're keeping our scope of practice in mind. We're keeping our bylaws and ethics in mind. We are keeping our trauma-informed care practices in mind. So we've got all of this, making sure that that's front and center, that we've got a safe container to start the work, and then a container that's flexible enough to allow for growth. So we're doing it in those stages, right? By doing something tangible, by bringing speakers in, presentations, participating in some national events, such as Orange. Here we have what's called Orange Shirt Day. And so it's on September 30th. And people who want to wear orange shirts that are called Every Child Matters. And basically it's around the story of a woman who was taken to residential school, and her grandmother gave her an orange shirt. And when she arrived at the school, they took that shirt away from her and chopped off all her hair and gave her a school uniform. And so she was quite devastated by losing that precious shirt that her grandmother gave her. So we're doing those kinds of tangible things, as well as building that container. So that's where we are organizationally.
Susan, a follow-up question. When you say you're trying to figure out how to change organizations, is it the organization that you're working in, or is it a bigger organization? So context of
so
scope.
I'm talking about the organization of our professional association.
Okay.
Yeah.
Big one.
1,200 members. And is this just for clarification, is it the professional organization of massage therapists? Okay.
Yes, in our province.
Mm-hmm.
However, it has the potential to have invitations for other colleges and associations across the country, because this is a national conversation, but we're just starting here. Yeah.
David, did I see your hand?
You did not,
Oh.
but you'll prompt me to ask my question. I have just really basic practical questions in terms of what is the format in terms of when we gather, how will that go in terms of time? Is that going to be evolving, or does it already have a form that you have in mind, or something that's been functional for a while? And also I'm wondering about numbers in terms of how many people you're anticipating being a part of that, and how you deal with those numbers in terms of being efficient with time.
Thank you very much. The format that we are working with right now is to gather for 90 minutes on Mondays in the AM and in the PM, 10 a.m. Eastern, 6 p.m., which will allow for our global community hopefully to be able to join one of those sessions during the day. As we move forward and as more people join the lab and get into a flow of participation, there will be more structure around the time. Right now, we are doing a bit of demonstrating what it would be like to bring a topic in or to have a deep dive into a conversation, but also sharing, like right now, some of the more logistical aspects of what, where the lab is right now. So the idea is, imagine that the lab is somewhat like the entrance or a lobby to the Moment Institute or to a bigger space, and that once a week we are able to gather here at a live time, and we come in and we mingle for a few minutes in the lobby, and then based upon either scheduled programming, a need from the community, or maybe it's just something, a current event, or something that's on everybody's hearts and minds, we will create breakout rooms. Where then at a certain point, which we're approaching here on our scheduled timeline, is that we will self-select into these rooms where you would like to go deeper for the day. There will be certain tracks, is the best way to describe it. And this is all emergent in the sense that the lab is always being co-created by the people who show up here and share. And for what the needs are in this space. And so through June, one of the things that we have heard from people who are finding this interesting or are curious, or at least feel comfortable and supported when they come here, is that a little bit more structure is needed to know about what are the potentials for the breakout rooms for me to go into. So we're really kind of organizing them right now and putting some structure around one that is connection. So whether that's you want to be here to bond, to network, to share, that there will be an organizing space around that many of you here are professionals working with clients or organizations who maybe are looking to try new ways of being, or new approaches, or new exercises or practice. So we want to offer a track that is around integration of who you are, but also who you are becoming with this work, and to provide a safe space for you to practice those things. So, if anybody wanted to come in and learn a little bit more about a concept, a topic, a practice, something that maybe they touched upon at a retreat with David, or maybe in narrative coaching, an aspect that you feel like you'd like to dig in deeper, there will be an avenue for that. And then the third one that we are anchoring as kind of like base offerings is this idea of incubation, that so many of us through our relationships and through our time in this community or with the Moment Institute become activated in a way where we want to do something. And do something can feel really big and broad, but that's how we can come together and say, well, what does that look like? What does that sound like for you, where you are, with who you work with, or the organizations that you're involved in, and to plant these seeds of ideas or projects that we can then cultivate together. So very similar to what Susan has brought to us today, which is around, here's something that I am working on. I have a background in this area, but this is how I'm applying it very practically, is that I went through this program, I've got this as a background, but I need to integrate it with who I am in my world and who I want to work with. And it would be nice to be in conversation with other people with similar backgrounds or approaches to kind of help bring that forth. The last thing that I'll say around kind of the breakouts is that the Moment Institute has a few long-standing beloved programs or events, the park benches and the pivotal moments, which are conversations that are hosted and facilitated by community members. We want those to be options for the lab as well. And so, I've got Robert here, who is one of the hosts for Pivotal Moments. And in the evening, Bronwyn generally joins as one of the hosts for park benches, to say, if you want to come into this space and kind of just funnel yourself into one of these known experiences that are cultivated by community members, that will be an option as well. When we talk about numbers, generally what we're seeing right now is, upwards of 30 people who will join a call. It's a little lighter today, but that when we're in conversation, the needs will present themselves. We'll have these options, but if something like we have a special guest like Susan today who is available to share this project. I know, Susan, you said you had to go at the top of the hour, so I'm just using this for an example, not because I'm setting an expectation, but perhaps Susan, in the future would come in and say, I'm going to facilitate a breakout room, or I'm going to host a breakout room specifically around this project. So anybody who wants to break out with me can come into my room, or you can go into the connecting, the incubation, or the integration paths. And then what we'll do is we will put the breakout rooms and you'll self-select, and then we'll have a period of time where we can deep dive into those topics together. Does that answer your question, David?
It does. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay. Is there anywhere else I can provide additional clarity as best I know it? Okay. I would love for us to take some time to get into breakout rooms today. Susan, I know that you are going to have to go in a few minutes, but I'm wondering if I can think of two based upon the conversations that we've had so far. And one of them, it's kind of a bigger bucket. And Stephanie, I'm wondering if you might join this group is, how do you start to translate or talk about the approaches of narrative coaching or ID, which are less rigid and process driven, into work that you do with organizations. And I'm wondering, Susan, if that might, even a bit of that conversation might be helpful to you, where you started your request of the community today, and that like the two of you could join that room. I will. Anybody who has additional questions related to the Moment Institute or the labs or programming, stay in this main room with me. And I will be happy to answer any of those questions. And then I just want to say, is there anybody who feels compelled to have another room of some kind, or host a different kind of conversation? We'd happily be able to break out into a third. Okay. Let me just go ahead, and I'm going to, can't do this on the front end because you never know what the breakout rooms are going to be, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to call this the, having to think on the fly here. I'm just going to, it's not a beautifully titled name, but I'm just going to call it application. Sorry that isn't more creative, but it is, I think, contextually appropriate. So we have one breakout room that's called application. And if you want to go and talk about how these things, again, are showing up for you in your working world or with your clients, that would be a great space for you to get into deeper conversations with people on that topic. And again, if you wanted to stay and ask more direct questions about the lab or the Moment Institute, or just to connect a little bit more with this as a community, we can go ahead and stay in the main room. I'm going to have the breakout rooms for just 20 minutes for today, and you will get a 60-second notification when the breakout rooms are going to close. So just know that you'll see a little timer in the corner of your screen, which will denote how much time that we have in the breakout rooms. And then there will be a broadcasted message that says there's 60 seconds left at that point. And then we'll come back into the main room, share a few insights and reflections, any questions that come up, and we'll go from there. So I will I'm going to open the rooms, and you should have the ability to self-select where you want to be. So if you want to go with Stephanie and, at least for a little while, Susan, to talk more about the applications of this work in different kinds of spaces, please go ahead and select that. But if you want to hang out here and talk a little bit more to each other, or to ask questions, I will hold down this space. And if you don't see the breakout option, you would look in your Zoom taskbar. You should see something that says breakout rooms. And when you do click on that, you should see an option for application or just to stay here in this main room with me. People are joining their rooms. I'm going to go ahead and press pause on the recording here. We don't record the breakout room session. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. People are floating back in the room from our application space. Stephanie, how'd it go in your room?
Oh, it was absolutely beautiful. We just were sharing where the kind of space that we want to create. And I don't know, I don't want to put you on the spot, Karen, but if you wanted to share it, that would, I think that the group could really benefit from your wisdom. But it's okay. I'm not trying to put pressure on you.
And I appreciated meeting everyone in the breakout group, and I had an opportunity to talk a little about what's been interesting me and how I'm trying to frame my work, and it actually felt affirming, especially because it's not necessarily, it's a different way of looking at things than I've myself have seen, like, and so I talked about like the kind of work that I'm doing in one of the through themes that cuts across it, because I'm still that person that's still figuring out what they want to do when they grow up, and I have multiple interests, is that like what I landed on recently is this concept of accompaniment. And so it was an opportunity for me to really share and think out loud more about what that means to me in a very welcoming group. So thank you all for that.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you, Karen. There were similar themes discussed in our room as well. Any reflections that folks from our larger kind of connecting group want to share? Wonderful.
So the one piece I really appreciated you saying, Emily, was, I mean, it sounds to me like, and by the way, this is not a surprise. It sounds like to me this is evolving, which is very much what David does. And so I'm not surprised by that. I tell you what I came looking for is a sense that there at least some structure to it, that there'll be some kind of flow and some channels for that flow of energy as we connect with one another in some, pardon the use of the word, but mysterious ways, and find ways to be collaborative and discover. And that's exciting to me. And so my question was answered today, and I really appreciate that. And Emily, you really gave enough structure to satisfy my my need for that.
Thank you, David. It's exciting and challenging because there's a degree to which David and I have been working on and dreaming up the lab for months. And as we kind of open the doors for the, let's just say our soft opening, so to speak, bringing people into this space and hearing what real needs are, as opposed to what we, could have imagined the needs are, and how do we respond to that while still, being able to paint a picture of possibility for this space. David is traveling in Europe until next week at some point, but he will be a presence in this space as well, and will be able to continue to provide scaffolding. Anybody who knows and who has worked with David before knows that he's always in evolution, and that is kind of like the spirit and the heart of so much of his work. Is just to say, be here now, and what is happening in this moment, and how might we use it or work with it or just sit with it. And so, we've been in conversation about what are our key learnings for June? What are our key learnings from, the last 8 open house sessions that we've held, and the beautiful souls who've come in here to experience and share and be curious with. And one of the key things that we found is that people are really wanting and needing this, and we still need to provide more structure so that it exists in a frame that is familiar enough that people have an understanding of what the lab is and what it can do for them. But there's still room for it to grow based upon who keeps showing up and what's being asked of it, and what are the ideas and the possibilities that, that we are able to collectively breathe into existence together. So thank you for that, David, and just for allowing me to share that it is something, this kind of both and is really what we're trying to hold as we are moving the lab forward into being. Any other questions from the group? So I can share with you, for anybody who is not joined us in this space just yet, I'm going to share my screen. I get always a little self-conscious when I do this because
Emily, Yarn has his.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please go ahead. I was looking over here at another screen and I didn't see you.
Yeah, it's okay. No worries. And if you think this is better to do at 11:30, that's fine too, because I think maybe some people will already know this. But can you say a few more words about like park bench and pivotal moments?
Yeah, absolutely. Those are, I would say they're kind of like through lines for the Moment Institute. They are regularly, monthly held events, sessions that are hosted by our community members. Park benches is one that you are brought into a space with no agenda, no slides. And what happens there is emergent and gently held and facilitated by Bronwyn or Claudia. And the conversation unfolds the way it would if you were walking through a park and sat down on a bench next to a stranger, and what might occur in that moment. Pivotal moments is, please.
It's one-on-one.
It's not one-on-one. It depends on whoever shows up to that space.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's sort of, but then somebody comes forth and sits in the proverbial bench with the stranger.
And it could, and then it could be a room where silence is held for a considerable amount of time and until someone is moved to share or speak.
Okay, great. Sorry, thank you. And
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And pivotal moments historically has been a session where David provides an introduction to a topic or something, that's top of mind. And the majority of the session is then breakout rooms where individuals are, sharing deeply around this idea or this topic. And Robert, who's in this space today, is one of the co-hosts for that, as is Karen Weatherford, another member here at the Moment Institute. So that one, there is a bit more structure, but also that, again, depending upon the energies or the insights of a given breakout room, the conversation can meander in different ways. And that's something beautiful generally always happens as a result of that. Robert, is there anything more that you wanted to add?
No, not really. I think you covered it really well, Emily. I'd say that it's sort of, the structure is starting off with the idea, as you stated, then into breakout rooms, which are kind of randomly created, basically, and then people talk, and then at the end of the session, then we come back to the main. Then there's a big brief. So the different conversations that were had in the breakout rooms then form a new thread that develops from that. Yeah.
And how these longstanding events continue as an integrated part of the lab is, again, also still evolving because hosts like Bronwyn or hosts like Robert have been invited to imagine what these events look like within the frame or within the integrated space of the lab. They each have their own identity and ethos and energy, and that's something that we'd love to maintain. And just to share that they could have some new ideas or nuances or directions as the people who have been holding space or facilitating them, see possibilities for that within inside the lab. All right. I do want to show you the Circle platform for those who haven't been with us at one of these open house sessions. I'm going to share my screen really quickly. Just to show that it looks very similar to a private Facebook group, but it is completely free of advertisement, and it's white labeled and 100% within our design control. So what you'll see here is something that says the Threshold Lab. Now, this is really the space that we've been building out with the folks who have joined and who are members. So you can see the running list of members of this community over here. In the future, we'll be building out these sections, which will hold the programs or the retreats. So, we're using a different platform now, a different learning management system to help facilitate the programmatic or curriculum aspects, but eventually that will all be held here. So anybody who's going through a narrative coaching certification will be able to interact and see at various levels different aspects of each community. So underneath the Threshold Lab here, I just want to highlight a few spaces that we're currently building out. So discussions is just a place to start a conversation, ask a question. The live sessions is here where you will see the weekly sessions that we're holding in the AM and the PM. You'd be able to RSVP to these and get the associated Zoom link for that time. No need to quote unquote register because you could always just toddle up here 20 minutes before the session and get the link. So it's not something that needs to happen with great forethought. It could just be if something opened up in your day and you find yourself with the ability to check in here. For me, the real beauty around having these sessions set is it gives us an accountability or a point of time on our calendars that if we need this, we can now schedule it with regularity into our professional lives. Resources is a place where we are sharing resources, but tools, ideas, here's a list to where you can go to find all the archived videos. David's going to be posting additional video content in this space as well. We've got some exciting ideas for how we're going to utilize that in an even greater way. A bulletin board is kind of a virtual space where you could make an offer to the community or a request. We had an individual, Hillary Joel, in this space with us last week, and she did a little intro to how she's using improv professionally with organizations and the correlation between improv and some ID work, staying in the moment, building in the moment. And, afterwards she says, oh my gosh, that was so fun. It almost feels selfish of me to have come on here and to talk about this, because I'm just getting so many more ideas. And I said, well, Hillary, you can always offer within our community if anybody wants to come and practice improv with you towards this end, or to explore how they might be able to use improv. All you have to do is come to the bulletin board and post and ask for when would be a great day, and then we could come right back in here and schedule a live session and put it out there in front of any member to be able to join. And then the last area that I want to highlight really quickly is just, we're going to have a thread devoted to case stories. So we'll be sharing in the resources section, just like kind of a rough template of how you might approach documenting or writing this up and sharing in the space to add value and additional scaffolding or support to the community to show how narrative coaching or ID or some of these other things, you're using them with your clients or in organizations. So that's going to be a thread that we continue to build out there. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen at the moment and bring us back into the room as we're hitting that 90-minute mark. I want to thank you all for your time and your presence and your questions and your curiosity for what we're trying to build here and what we're trying to get off the ground. I've said this in a number of the sessions. I'm an educator. I do a version of this with my students. And I say to them after every Zoom meeting where we're connecting from all across the world, and wherever they are in their life, they've shown up with openness, interest, and curiosity, that this doesn't work without you all here. And that it is meant for you and with you. And it is your questions and ideas that will continue to move this to what it will become. And so I thank you so much for being here. I will absolutely stay on to answer any more questions at this time, but I also want to thank my co-host Stephanie. Is there anything you'd like to add here?
There we go. Just thank you. And Karen, thank you for the courage to share with us. Because you could see there was a sense of hesitation, but what you shared was just absolutely beautiful. And I think that's the environment where it's a place to test and be who you are. So thank you all for being so willing to play.
Yes. David and I will be following up these open house sessions in June with an email and a communication, just sharing what we've learned, and then just like where to from here and what to enjoy and expect in the lab for July. And so we're collaborating on that this week, and we'll be getting that out to you as soon as we can.